like I feel like we just sometimes sign players that we focus on what they do that 1 or 2 years, but not in general what they're going to be able to do with their other teammates around them.
Well, you have to think about like all the entities that are involved in this process. So part of the reason why this is so challenging is that there are a few parties here, right? There's the Real Madrid board, and then there's the manager, and then depending on the era, there may be a sporting director or not. So ultimately, the final decision making has to come from the board to approve or veto deals. But the issue is like, so I would say that this particular era is actually a good era, right? With regards to that, because Zidane basically is also the sporting director. They kind of act in sync. In most cases, and part of the reason why Real Madrid may be quote unquote underachieved, and this to me actually ties into your question about the Galacticos and why they didn't win as many trophies as they should have, is because coaches are flipped through, right? So let's take the most recent example of this. We went from losing Zidane to following that up with Julian Lopetegui and Santiago Solari, right? So Zidane, Lopetegui, and Solari are three coaches that have vastly different playing styles. So each player is going to either suffer or excel in one of those systems because it fits their style or it doesn't. So somebody like Reguilon and Marcos Llorente benefited from Solari. Somebody like Isco and Asensio benefited from Lopetegui. And others will benefit under Zidane. So to build your roster in that light, it can be difficult and challenging because you're basically putting your trust in a manager who may not be here 3-4 months from now, right? So let's say with Solari, for example, Solari's wishes at that time was basically to get rid of Isco, right? There were personal, there was something personal between them.
Right.
So the club has to look at that and be like, okay, Solari wants this to happen to Isco. Who's going to be here longer, Isco or Solari? So, and there is no sporting director in this current Real Madrid era. There was, I think the last one was Jorge Valdano. So then there's different entities making decisions, and you have to kind of figure out what is best for the club long term. If a coach wants something, there is a very real scenario that coach might actually be around longer, and then the next coach actually might want Isco, right? So I think that's part of the challenge. And part of the reason why people are probably sick of hearing the example of Monchi at Sevilla, but like one of the reasons why they can go through 11 different players in their starting lineup from one season to the next and still be good, like good as in like they're going to be a fourth place team every year, is because Monchi knows exactly the type of player that Sevilla want to sign, right? You think about Brahim Diaz, for example. Brahim Diaz, a lot of people are like, why are we letting this guy go? Brahim Diaz was not a Zinedine Zidane signing. He was signed when Zidane left for a year or a year-ish. So then all of a sudden Zidane comes back and there's this player that he didn't ask for. So now, mind you, Zidane likes Brahim from everything we've heard and actually has pleasantly surprised Zidane. And he's still on loan. We haven't sold him. But that's just one example, right? If a coach comes in, it's not a player he wants, and that's a challenge, right? So, I mean, that's part of the challenge. I would say it's better now than it's been in a long time, and we can be thankful for that. But they're going to make mistakes. With someone like Jovic, I would also say Zidane brought up the Casemiro, or Matt Wiltse. Matt Wiltse brought up the
that comparison.
It's the hair, it's the completely identical look that it reminded me of Zidane. Matt brought up the example of Casemiro and that, the words of wisdom he may pass to Vinicius or Rodrigo. Casemiro himself, is an example of you're not going to play for Real Madrid right away. But if you're patient about it, wasn't there that famous quote from Zidane to Casemiro, your time will come? Zidane has also reportedly said something similar. Actually, he's said it in press conference that he kind of views Jovic in a similar light, that like Jovic will play. It may not be now. Now you can agree or disagree with that, but there's also room for future development that Jovic may be an important player one day. But so to tie this into your question about early millennium and the Galacticos, there was no sporting vision in place, and it actually deteriorated like quite a bit every year. Like a layer of paint was peeled off that project every year with their decision making. Basically, from 2000 to 2003, everything that Florentino did was bang on. Like he was hitting all his targets, right? So Figo, resounding success. Zidane, resounding success. and he kept pushing the envelope. OG Ronaldo, resounding success, no matter how you spin it. Like, I know, like, there was, as he got older, it became a bit more difficult to play him, but he was still at a high level, and they won a league with title with him. That was 3 years of success. At that point, I think he got to a stage where his head got so big where he thought he was infallible, and no matter what he decided, it would make it work. If you look at the justification process for signing David Beckham, it was delusional. Like, go read the quotes now, 20 years later almost, of like, oh, Valdano was like, they were holding him back at United, playing my right wing. He's a central midfielder. Like, what are you talking about? And then they sold Makalele. So there's like all that stuff, and that came with a lot of dominoes with it. So it's just mistakes and lack of a sporting director. And if you're not going to have a sporting director, at least you need to have some kind of sporting vision in place, which didn't exist at the time.
Yeah,
So
the only thing I